Hello again, Gooners. Yes, it's night goggle time. Night goggles time even. This is the loose cannon number, what is it, 46 or something like that? Please forgive me if it's wrong. Let me have a little check. What does it say there? Yeah, 46. That sounds about right. So yeah, just checking all the details, and obviously not a good day for the Great British Olympic team going out of the tournament against South Korea. Good for Rambo, though, to step up and take a penalty in the penalty shootout after missing one in normal time and scoring one too. He was a bit lucky with the one he scored, but I mean the guy's got a lot of belief, self-belief, and you can't knock it. And I'm not gonna deny that that at times I've been a little bit critical of him, but he is a player I've got a lot of confidence in. If he's played further up the park. But anyway, I'm digressing already, and I've only just got here, or you've just got here. Anyway, what are we going to be talking about today? I'll just run through the following, and then I'll tell you what. I'll give you the quiz question first. The quiz question today, and I'm going to come to it later on as I read from, not Steve Stammers for a change, The Official History of Arsenal, written by Phil Saw and Martin Tyler. I'm going to read a little bit from that about modern Arsenal. And the story begins in late 1974, around about that time. But the question is about late 1974, and who did we buy for £150,000 from Hibernian, Hibs, or Hibees, I think they're called as well by some people. Right, who are we going to talk about? On the transfer front, Benik Afobe, Robin van Persie, Santi Cazorla, Nuri Sahin. We've been mentioning those names all the time, or I have. I'm not wearing purple, so I can't say the royal we. And by Niang, haven't heard a lot about him for a while, and you'll know why shortly. Victor Wanyama, Ryo Miyaichi, Nicklas Bendtner. That's not a particularly transfer story, but bear with me on that. Mapou Yanga-Mbiwa, I think I mentioned him previously, not recently. Johan Djourou, he's been linked with the club, and Etienne Capoue. I think he's been linked with us in the past. But anyway, let's run through all of those, get all that transfer speculation out of the way. Benik Afobe, I think you probably know by now, he's joining Bolton on a season-long loan deal. Wish him the very best of luck with that. I'm not sure he's going to make the grade at Arsenal, sorry to say. But I think he'll make the grade elsewhere and may well forge a career lower part of the Premier League, possibly the Championship. I'd have to say, to me, he looks like a Championship player. Nothing wrong with that. The Championship is one of the best leagues in the world. It's just obviously not the same level as Arsenal are playing at. So I hope Afobe can prove me wrong and perhaps forge a career at Arsenal. Personally can't see it. Santi Cazorla, what's the latest on him? Well, the most interesting thing I've heard, apart from him signing a 4-year deal and going to Germany with the rest of the players for the training camp, and clearly he's joining Arsenal. That's virtually guaranteed now. I think we've seen enough footage to believe that. But can we believe this transfer fee? £12.65 million. Is it real? I'm not sure. I can imagine Malaga doing a deal. They do seem to be imploding at the moment, and they're just selling everything they've got. And, well, I think they're possibly going to sell another player very soon. We shall see. But £12.65 million, if we've got him for that, we've done a great deal for a player who's around about 27 years of age. And that brings me to a player slightly older who's worth around about the same, according to our good friend Stuart Robson. Now, I'm of the belief that if you're a football pundit, you should be allowed to speak your mind, and Stuart speaks his mind. And I don't agree with anything. No, that's going too far. I don't agree with a lot that Stuart Robson says, particularly about Abu Diaby being a new Patrick Vieira, that kind of stuff, and now Theo Walcott is just an athlete that picked up a pair of football boots. Clearly, I don't agree with those two statements at all. So we're diametrically opposed, if you like. If I want to get flash and just throw in words that I'm not so sure of the meaning of. No, actually, I know what that means, but I do that kind of thing occasionally. But anyway, Stuart Robson doesn't. And he's a very good football pundit. He speaks his mind. He doesn't sit on the fence. We don't want some Trevor Brooking type character who just sits on the fence and says, "Wow, I don't really know exactly." We don't want that. We want somebody like Stuart Robson that stirs up the hornet's nest. I know we're not the Hornets, but I think just bear with Stuart Robson. He's an ex-Arsenal player. If he criticises the manager, then so be it. I criticise the manager too, but it doesn't mean that I don't want the team to win. I want to be proved wrong, and I'm sure Stuart feels the same. So he's now saying that we should let Robin van Persie go for £12 million, which is similar to the amount that Santi Cazorla was signed for, according to the Daily Star. Well, Daily Star, I think, are the ones running the Robin van Persie £12 million possibility of him staying. You know, that's their story. Sorry, not the £12 million. They're saying that Robin van Persie might want to stay. So then the fee suddenly becomes academic. The Independent have said that Robin van Persie has said no to Manchester City, or certainly doesn't want to go there. I don't think he's adamant he doesn't want to go there. I think that's the story they're running, as opposed to him saying no, which adamant he doesn't want to go is near enough the same thing. We are asking for more money from the likes of the two Manchester clubs. We will accept less from Juventus. Our asking price to Juventus is about 25 million, but Manchester City are the team offering the most money, or are about to offer the most money, which is around about £20 million for a player that's got a year left on his deal. That does seem quite a lot of money to get. So if he goes, I just think we should get the best price for him. If he goes to Manchester City, so be it. Obviously, I'd prefer him to go to Juventus, but I don't see him doing a U-turn and staying. I think he's left it too late. I know he's going to be involved in the training camp, possibly play in the friendly game against Cologne. But our asking price of £30 million from other Premier League clubs is a bold gesture, but it's just not going to work. But well done to the club for doing that. I think perhaps lessons have been learned or learnt from those previous experiences last summer. We've played the Robin van Persie situation quite badly, but not as badly as before. So let's give the club some credit there. And of course, if we sign Santi Cazorla and Nuri Sahin, the other player who could be joining us, Sid Lowe, very well-respected journalist in Spain, saying it's more or less going to happen. But interestingly enough, he said that Sahin is not keen to join us on loan. Real Madrid want to let him go. Jose Mourinho has said that the player's future is in his own hands, so he can leave as far as Jose Mourinho, the Real Madrid coach, is concerned. So looks like he will be on the move. Not necessarily to us, it could be Spurs he goes to, and I think there's interest from other clubs too, possibly Manchester United. So I'm not going to say for sure that Sahin is, that doesn't sound like a done deal. Cazorla sounds like a done deal to me. I can stick my neck out on that one. What about Niang? That sounded like a done deal not very long ago, but it's not going to be a done deal for another couple of weeks, apparently. Caen, the French club, are interested in selling him. It's not, the deal's not going to be done for a fortnight, they're saying, for the 17-year-old striker. He could be joining Manchester City or possibly AC Milan. So it's three possibilities for Niang. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference to our season wherever he goes, so I'm not too worried about that one. The same goes for Victor Wanyama, although a lot of people said he really is a great footballer. I am yet to be convinced that that is in fact true. He's young enough to improve a lot. He's a Kenya international midfielder, of course, playing out a position in defence, sometimes for Celtic. Does a reasonable job, bit clumsy, reasonable pace, can pass the ball quite well. Yeah, and he's very good in the air. I've got to give him credit for that. And Celtic don't really want to sell him anyway, so will he go? I'm not sure. I don't think, if they want £7 million, I just think it's too expensive. I wouldn't pay that. 5 possibly. I mean, he's young enough for the money to be a good investment, I feel. Manchester United apparently interested, as are ourselves. Personally, I don't really believe it. We're talking about the northwest of the country, like Manchester region. That's the kind of region Ryo Miyaichi could be heading for. It looks like he's going to go on loan to Wigan. I think that would be a good experience for him. He needs a lot more experience and first-team experience, and he's not going to really get it at Arsenal for this forthcoming season. And it looks like if we do let Miyaichi join Wigan, they will let Victor Moses go, possibly to Chelsea. So inadvertently, we're strengthening one of our rivals for those Champions League spots. Well, one player we're not going to miss at all is Nicklas Bendtner. He's really, I mean, he's a player that I quite like. I'll be honest with you. I think he could develop into a good centre forward if he could get his head back where it should be, because it's disappeared somewhere very dark indeed. And he's recently gone on Twitter to say that he was drinking green tea with friends when he found out that he was fined for the driving offences. And now that's all very well, but it doesn't. It's not. It's a bit of a PR faux pas, if you like, and I think Nicklas Bendtner should know better, and you know, he reckons loads of clubs are interested in him. Who are those clubs? Why is it taking so long? Nicklas Bendtner just needs to knuckle down, pull his socks up, and start concentrating on what he's good at, which is playing football. Some people say he's not very good at that. I tend to disagree with that. I think Nicklas Bendtner would be a much better footballer if he could just concentrate on the game. But I've always had the impression that Nicklas isn't overly in love with the game. I think he was asked once I may be mistaken, but this is my remembrance of what happened. I think Nicklas was asked about what does he do in his spare time, and he more or less said that he gets as far away from football as possible, which is all very well, but it gives you the feeling that he doesn't really love football that much. So makes you wonder, will he live up to his potential? The answer to that is probably no, the way he's going. So if he can't make it Arsenal, it's not like New York. If you can't make it there, you can't make it anywhere. Of course he can make it elsewhere. But is he going to be a big star? Is he going to be that superstar striker that he could have been? I doubt it. But I think that's down to what's going on in his head as opposed to his ability. I think he's got pretty good ability. He's not a world beater, but he could have been there or thereabouts, I feel, and I don't think he's going to get anywhere close, unfortunately. Nicklas, please prove me wrong, because I'm not one of your detractors, not by any means. Another player that some of us would wish further, not me, that's for sure, Johan Djourou, is being linked with Real Mallorca. They've got 1.8 million euros to spend, apparently, after selling Ivan Ramis to Wigan. And Ivan Ramis is the player they want to replace, but the stumbling block appears to be Johan Djourou's £30,000 a week wages. Now, if that's all we're paying him, I don't think we should consider getting rid of Djourou. He's a versatile player. He's good for team spirit, I believe. He's not the sort of guy that's going to be banging on the office door of the manager every day and demanding a first team place. You need players like that. He's a squad player. Let's keep him. I'll be very disappointed if we let Djourou go, I have to say. We could bring in Mapou Yanga-Mbiwa, sorry. He's 23 from Montpellier. I think I mentioned him before, but it looks like he's more likely to go to AC Milan for £6 or £7 million, apparently. And another player being linked with us, although very tenuously, is Etienne Capoue. He's 24 years of age, this midfielder. He's currently with Toulouse. Looks like he's set for Seville. That's what people are saying, and yet Toulouse, the French club, are saying, although he wants Champions League football, Capoue, there are no offers on the table just yet. So, that's it. That's all the transfer news for now on Arsenal, but if you're interested, I'm going to read from this book, and if you're not, then I suggest you switch off at this point. But the question is, if you're interested, in late 1974, who did we buy? What was the name of the player that we bought in 1974 for £150,000 from Hibernian of Scotland? And just to give you a clue, he was born in Aldershot, and he did play for Scotland, though, even though he was born in England. And so, right, taking you back in time with this book from Phil Saw and Martin Tyler, we've just lost the FA Cup to Leeds United in 1972, and that team obviously were almost not quite invincible, but they were hard to beat. So, anyway, I will now read. Are you sitting comfortably? It is often said that great teams last 3 seasons at most. Truism it may be, but it was absolutely right as far as the double side was concerned. Though in retrospect, the great years seem to encompass 5 finals in 5 years, that was more of a journalist's convenience than a reflection of footballing reality. The League Cup seasons of 1968 and 1969 could not be described as glorious, and Arsenal's displays at Wembley were as likely to indicate slow decline in the years ahead as they were to foretell a glorious flowering. Even the Fairs Cup was not then what it seems with the benefit of hindsight. Leeds had won the trophy in 1968, Newcastle 69, and our triumph in 1970, already overshadowed by World Cup preparations, was to be followed by 3 more years of English triumph via Leeds, Spurs and Liverpool. This was seen by the public at large as a vindication of one of the more irritating of English football cliches. The Football League is the toughest, /strongest, most competitive in the world. If this was the case, it was perhaps odd that only 3 English sides even reached the final in the next decade. Arsenal's success was nonetheless seen at the time as an almost automatic continuation of English dominance. The surprise would have been if a league side had not won the trophy at the time. The mood seemed to be World Cup in 1966, Celtic and United winning the European Cup in 67 and 68, Manchester City the Cup Winners' Cup in 1970, and a whole string of Fairs Cup successes proved the British game is back where it belongs, on top of the world. Obviously, that's not the case now with Team GB going out of the quarterfinals to South Korea, so I had to throw that in. This devalued Arsenal's triumph, which was considerable, and 1969-1970 should rightly be seen as the first of 3 excellent years. The third of these, 1971-72, was, as we've seen, not to end in triumph. It is a peculiar response which calls a runners-up place in one of the 2 major competitions a disappointment, but after the double it could be little else. The Spurs Cup-winning side of 62 suffered, if anything, an even greater deflation. So after a season which would have satisfied the ordinary mortals of the First Division, Arsenal and the fans of 1972 were in mourning. The double success had set such an extraordinary standard for the side that was 5th in the table, and a losing visit to Wembley amounted emotionally to failure. There was unrest in the camp during the summer of 1972, which led to both George and Kelly, that's Charlie George and not George Graham, I think, and Eddie Kelly being put on the transfer list. Both felt they were not being rewarded adequately in comparison with more senior players who were then benefiting from the club's loyalty payments. You see, these pay disagreements have been going on for years. By this time, Charlie George, the cheeky cockney of the media and darling of the North Bank, had become the problem child of Highbury, flitting from reserves to substitutes bench to first team and back again. An immense talent was going to waste, and there did not seem anybody capable of coping with a complex and unpredictable character who always had a young head on young shoulders and was rarely as confident as he appeared. With hindsight, the months even that followed were the turning point in Bertie Mee's managership. He was not to know, but it would be all downhill from that 5th cup final in 5 years, and that, unfortunately for me, was the time when I started really getting into football and watching as much Arsenal as I could. He had a major decision to take, whether to keep faith with the men who had won the double for him or build another side. He had already put the finger on his main fear by pondering that it might be possible for one man to motivate himself again, but all 11? 2 months into the 72-73 season, he gave a distinct indication of the way his thoughts were turning when he bought Jeff Blockley, a stopper centre-half in the traditional mould, from Coventry for £200,000. And my recollection of Jeff Blockley was he wasn't the best. Some people might have described him as a cart horse. I mean, I was too young to really know these things, but I was just listening to what people were saying. Bertie Mee, the boss, was later to call the move his greatest mistake. Blockley, who was to make his only England appearance at the start of 2 generally unhappy years at Highbury, was obviously a replacement for Frank McClintock. The news hit a nervous dressing room like a bombshell. Not only did Frank McClintock feel his days at the top were far from over, but his teammates still regarded the inspirational Scot as the best skipper in the league and capable of doing a first-rate job in defence. Bertie Mee, although publicly defending his team's no-frills approach to the game, was privately stung by the persistent volleys of criticism that, for all their success, Arsenal were failing in their duty to entertain. Boring old Arsenal was the persistent cry throughout the land, particularly north of Watford. Mee's answer was an attempt to turn Arsenal into the total footballers of Holland, who had developed a revolutionary system in which players were encouraged to be flexible about their positions and to use their skills in an ever-changing pattern. Arsenal had discovered how effective it could be firsthand earlier in the year when the European Cup holders Ajax of Amsterdam knocked them out on the way to retaining their title. But Arsenal's flirtation with the style alien to their successful long ball game, and one equally unsuited to the English First Division, was brief, and a 5-0 beating at Derby, I remember that quite clearly, even though I wasn't there, I remember the pain, hard on the heels of a 3-0 League Cup defeat at home by Norwich, prompted a tactical rethink. Arsenal, sacrificing general popularity in the cause of efficiency and results, went back to what they did best, and the team, with John Radford and Ray Kennedy back in harness, went 15 games without defeat as they pursued Liverpool for the title through early 1973 and headed for Wembley again. A chance to avenge the defeat by their old sparring partners from Leeds looked a distinct possibility when the Gunners were paired in the FA Cup semi-finals with 2nd Division Sunderland. And I remember this quite clearly, listening on the radio, eating Murray mints, which I think was Murray mints, or Spangles, that was it, because I thought they were lucky. Well, you'll find out what happened. A victory would also make Arsenal the first team this century to reach 3 consecutive cup finals. But this was one of those years when the romance of the cup defied logic all the way to Wembley, and not only did Bob Stokoe's men dispose of Arsenal 2-1 at Hillsborough, they later shocked favourites Leeds in a memorable final thanks to Ian Porterfield's goal and goalkeeper Jim Montgomery's heroics. After overcoming the 2 hardest opponents in English football, they surely deserved the cup. The Hillsborough semi-final was an astonishing game fraught with emotion and despair. Charlie George's goal was somehow never going to be enough to match what Sunderland had to offer, and the Wearsiders won, with goals from Hallam and Hughes. Blockley played when not fully fit, and his uncertainty set the mood for the success of the second division side. Coming second was developing into a worrying habit, and although Arsenal finished runners-up in the league to Liverpool, only 3 points behind, they could not even claim to be the most successful team in London, for the old enemy at Tottenham had beaten Norwich to win the League Cup. The result was that Bertie Mee became even more convinced that he must rebuild, and he allowed more key men to depart. Frank McClintock, at 34 years of age, responded to a lucrative offer from Queen's Park Rangers and proved his point by having 4 more good years and leading Rangers to within a whisker of the Championship in 75-76, when Liverpool pipped them by a point. George Graham, striker turned elegant Scotland midfielder, became Tommy Docherty's first buy as Manchester United manager. That Graham, who was doing a valuable job in helping his younger teammates, felt in need of a fresh challenge, hinted at a less than perfect mood in the dressing room. There was another departure with the new 73-74 season only weeks old. Coach Burton Shaw resigned after 2 home defeats and a 5-0 thrashing at Sheffield United. I think I remember that too. The players had not been responding to him for some time. He had never been able to lay the ghost of Don Howe, and it was an open secret that Bertie Mee wanted to replace him with the extrovert 36-year-old Bobby Campbell, who had helped Gordon Jago bring QPR up from the second division. Burton Shaw had not seen the last of Highbury's Halls. On the 28th of March 86, he was appointed caretaker manager after the sudden departure of Don Howe. But not even the most demanding fans expected the new partnership to conjure up a championship side in one season, and they suffered with the team as the wheel turned full circle in less than 2 years. The Fairs Cup winners of 70, double winners of 71 and Wembley finalists of 72 were dumped out of the League Cup in the second round at Highbury by Little Tranmere Rovers, removed from the FA Cup in the 4th round replay at Villa Park, and limped along to 10th place in a First Division campaign dominated by Leeds United, who laid the foundations of their championship with an unstoppable 29-match unbeaten run. That was truly horrific, I've got to say. I remember that. I remember waking up to those headlines about Tranmere. Awful stuff. Defeat by Tranmere did have one blessing in disguise, for it allowed a young Dubliner called Liam Brady to break through into the first team, where he was to benefit from the experience and influence of Alan Ball. But fate had a cruel hand to play against these two in the last inconsequential match of the season against QPR. Bob Wilson's farewell appearance after 11 years and Brady's first league goal in a 1-1 draw were overshadowed by Alan Ball breaking his leg in a tackle on Terry Venables. Instead of captaining Don Revy's England team on their summer tour, Alan Ball spent the whole of the close season battling his way back to fitness. During the summer, there was another major rethink on tactics. Because the Radford-Kennedy partnership had faltered again in the second half of the season, and the problem was an overweight and below-par Ray Kennedy. Even though he was still only 22, the physical punishment taken at the sharp end had dulled the Big Geordie's appetite for the game. Where am I? Yeah, his appetite for the game, but not for his poor food. He was... I don't know if we had McDonald's in the UK at that time, but yeah, obviously it was taking the edge off his physical fitness. He was always a bit on the large side, Ray Kennedy. A very good player though, and a gentleman. He opened the door for my uncle, my great uncle, and he was always telling me about it, and I never got sick of hearing it, to be honest. He would have done well to follow the example of the canny old campaigner John Radford, who not only took to wearing shin pads down the front of his socks, but also in the back. But an undoubted talent was still there to be tapped, and the legendary manager of Liverpool, Bill Shankly, made a farewell present of Kennedy to Anfield, paying £200,000 for him, just before the great man shocked football by announcing his retirement. It was left to another Geordie, new Liverpool boss Bob Paisley, to guide Kennedy into a career in midfield, where he acquired another chestful of medals, won 17 caps for England and became one of the most feared competitors in European football. Arsenal spent half the transfer fee on Manchester United's abrasive Brian Kidd, another teenage prodigy who had scored in United's historic European Cup win on his 19th birthday 6 years earlier. But although he repaid Arsenal with 19 goals in his first season, he never struck up comparable understanding with John Ramford, and it was quite plain that Liverpool had made the better investment. Brian Kidd was to move back to Manchester to play for Manchester City after 2 years in London. Alan Ball worked hard to recover from his broken leg, but hopes he could knit old and new personnel together were dashed when the new club's skipper suffered a fracture in his first match of the pre-season tour to Holland. This time it was his left ankle, and in the 7 weeks he was absent, the new campaign, although launched by Kidd's winning goal against Leicester, headed for disaster. Jeff Blockley and Charlie George were on the transfer list. The defender was to move to Leicester in the spring, and what fragile confidence there was collapsed as the team sank towards the bottom of the table, accompanied by Tottenham in 10 games without a win. I remember that too. Awful times. With spirits at their lowest ebb, Bertie Mee, encouraged by former Rangers coach Campbell, managed to pull a masterstroke with a modest £20,000 outlay on a balding 31-year-old centre-half who, in normal circumstances, would have never been regarded as Arsenal material. Terry Mancini had done a sterling job in the QPR success story. I wasn't overly pleased when we bought him, I've got to be honest. He did all right. He did okay. And he was a member of the famous East End boxing family. He was Italian of name, Cockney of voice, and of Irish parentage. But vitally for the Arsenal dressing room, he was a character, a natural comedian who transformed the atmosphere and established himself as a folk hero on the terraces. Mancini was rarely found wanting on the pitch either, despite his detractors, and he was good enough to win 5 caps for the Republic of Ireland, one of them alongside Liam Brady on his debut that same winter. Mancini's purchase proved inspired, but Bertie Mee's next buy was fated never to fulfil his potential. And here's the answer to the question I set earlier. It is Alex Cropley. Alex Cropley, a neat Scottish midfielder, came from Hibs for £150,000. He played only 7 games before breaking his leg and was never the same player again. Cropley was much admired for his grit and determination. Although slight of build, he tackled like a bulldozer. One result was that he spent much of his career injured on the sidelines. He was to play only 34 first-team games before moving to Aston Villa after 20 frustrating months at a less than appreciative Highbury. So I'll leave it there for now. That was a bit long, wasn't it? Sorry about that. And, well, until the next time, up the Gooners.